Let's talk about demo reels. Demo reels are a collection of your best work presented to recruiters, to hiring managers, to potential clients for freelance. It's your way of saying, this is what I can do, this is what I'd like to do, and if you hire me, please, this is what I can do for you. There are a lot of different ways you can go about putting together a demo reel. Some are really good, and there are some things you don't want to do at all. We're gonna get into all of that today. I have a lot of stuff collected from recruiters, hiring managers, studio managers, or I guess artist managers is the term for that, animators, a whole bunch of different people in the industry. And this information is good whether or not you're an animator, if you're a modeler, a lighting artist, if you want to be more of a generalist. Either way, all this information should help with whatever it is you want to put together. And in case you're new here, hi, I'm Sir Wade. I do a ton of animation stuff here on the channel. So if you like this type of video, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell so you don't miss new uploads. And if you have any questions, you want to talk about any of this kind of stuff live, I have a link to my Twitch down below where I'm live a couple times a week. Or if you want to support the channel and get access to more educational resources, a link to my Patreon. So let's get into it. 20 plus tips as fast as I can give them to you for putting together a good demo reel / portfolio. Kind of the same thing. As far as overall structure, 2 minutes is a hard limit, 1 minute maybe is like a target. You want quality over quantity. It doesn't matter that you have a whole bunch of different shots to show all this experience, because chances are you don't have a ton of experience. You may have some student films, some different projects you've worked on, your animation school assignments, walk cycles, there's a lot of exercises and things like that. You want to try and keep your reel short and sweet to the point, with the whole thing really just made out of your best and your favorite shots. I've heard from recruiters and from animators that sometimes your reel, depending on who's looking at it, can be defined by the worst thing on it. So if you can look at your reel and you can pick out a few things that are like, oh, that's definitely my worst, consider just removing it. Wherever you are kind of in terms of skill level, if you can see your worst work, if you can see like, that's not very good, chances are everyone else is gonna see it too. So if you're able to see that that's not that great, it's probably a good option to maybe consider taking it out. Also, I'm not numbering these tips just in case you were waiting for a number 2. We've already had number 2 and we're just gonna keep going. Anyways, but what I was saying before, that's especially true with anything that needs some explanation. If your shot isn't clear and easy to understand, probably shouldn't be there. You're not gonna be in the room. You're sending your demo reel as a link, probably a Vimeo link or something on your website or whatever. By the way, as far as where to put your demo reel, I use Vimeo. I recommend Vimeo. A lot of animators and other artists use Vimeo or ArtStation, depending on kind of what type of work you do. If it's mostly images, then having a link to a website, to ArtStation, to something like that will be very helpful to just have, something someone can scroll through easily and see your still imagery. Versus if you are doing animation or something that requires video previews, Vimeo is a good option because you can upload a video to Vimeo, and unlike YouTube, you're able to swap out the video file and keep the same link. So if you send out a link to 5 or 6 different studios and then update your demo reel, you can just swap the video file without having to re-upload a new video and then send out a new link to everybody. Makes it a lot more convenient. But anyways, you're sending this link to whoever's gonna look at it and you're not gonna be there. So if you normally show your shot to somebody and they go, okay, that's cool. Is this character upset? Like, what are they, if you have to then, do the whole thing where you're like, oh yeah, well, what he was thinking was da 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 da. If you have to do that, take it off your reel, because you're not gonna be there to do that. And if it's unclear to whoever you're showing in your day-to-day life, chances are the recruiter, the animator, whoever it is who's looking at it is gonna have the same thought. And you don't want that. However, you do want to be able to explain your choices, to explain why you did what you did, how long did it take you, any of that kind of information. Because if you do get a callback, if you get an interview, if you get a phone call, whatever it is that you're receiving from your demo reel, you want to be able to answer those types of questions. I've had recruiters share with me that is sometimes part of the conversation. What do you like about this shot? What would you change if you had done it differently now? How much time did it take you, and how much time do you think it would take you now if maybe it's an older shot? Be able to explain your choices, your workflow, the mentality behind whatever you were putting together, maybe why you chose this shot, where did the audio come from, what did you do with it? And when you're sending information to a recruiter, make sure that your demo reel, your resume, whatever you're sending, has your contact info, has a way to get in touch with you. Your name, your email, your phone number, your website, whatever it is, your social media. LinkedIn's a great option. And make sure that whatever links you are providing, if the person has to retype it on their own, if they can't just copy paste it from somewhere, like if it is baked into your video or whatever, make sure it's not some long crazy URL that someone has to really kind of cross-reference to make sure they type it properly. For example, my website is just sirwade.com. Easy. And I'll probably do a separate video on creating a website for yourself, a portfolio online, using social media for networking and so on. Let me know if you want to see a video like that. But for now, know that social media is actually a really great tool, and that a lot of recruiters will be happy to look at social media whether or not you invited them to. Sometimes they're browsing looking for artists to hire, and sometimes they'll just check the link if you included one. And to that end, if you have an Instagram, for example, with some artwork on there and then pictures of your dog and then your food and things like that, I would recommend making a separate art Instagram so that you can kind of have a visual portfolio of your work. That way, if you do send, for example, Instagram to a recruiter it's easy to find what they're looking for. They click the link, there's everything they need. They can click on it for more context in the little like blog caption area. But regardless of what social media platform you're using, you want it to be as easy to find your stuff as possible. Another thing that was shared with me by recruiters was the context of how you did your shot can sometimes be important. For example, if you have a character rig or tools that are kind of subpar, maybe not that great, to include how long something took you can be really important, because if you did something with, a rig, maybe the rig doesn't look that good, it's not that appealing, but you were able to accomplish whatever your shot was in like an hour, in a day, in however long, that might be really important so that they don't assume it took you a couple weeks, or vice versa. If something took you a really long time, as long as it makes sense that it would have taken that time, you can share that on the demo reel. You can bake that into the corner of how long it took you to do whatever was on screen. And if you want more information on this, by the way, I do have this video, which is a really, really great video where I interviewed a ton of different industry professionals when I was at CTN 2 years ago, I think. And there's advice from animators, recruiters, character designers, storyboard artists. There's a whole bunch of people in here sharing a ton of great information. So link to that down below, or I guess in this corner, you can click it here. So enjoy that. It's one of several interviews here on the channel. The next step is having a variety of shot types and animation styles. So as far as shot types, you want to have a mix, if you can, of acting and performance, mechanics and weight. You want to show the physicality of a character, but also that they can be human, that they can act and emote and have emotions. Depending on if you're trying to go into games, if you're trying to go into feature film, if you're trying to do TV, if you want to do commercials, the ratio of what's important may change a little bit. For example, Pixar is really going to want you to have good performance and acting. And obviously mechanics is important, but they really need you to have acting to make you cry, because it's Pixar, come on. And if you look at games, that's not to say that they don't require that, because if you look at the cinematics being created and a lot of even just gameplay stuff, there's a lot of character, a lot of personality. Now with technology getting better and better and what we can do in game engines, you're starting to need that kind of stuff because we can push things further. But on the flip side, there are some games that personality isn't as important, and it is more about the mechanics of the action. So depending on your skill level with different types of shots, what do you have more experience with versus what are you newer with, there's a lot of different range you can use here. But this also goes into comedy versus drama. Like you may not want to have all funny shots on your reel, especially if your jokes aren't actually that funny. If someone actually watches and laughs, that's a good sign. If you show it to a friend and they don't chuckle, maybe it's not as funny as you thought it was. But mix in some serious stuff with some comedic stuff and just kind of play around. Get your reel to have a nice variety, and also that does lead into the animation style. You may have some really realistic, hyper-real visual effects style work. You may have some really push crazy cartoony noodle arms and things like that, and anything in between. You don't necessarily have to just pick one style and just go in that direction, because that's the only way you're gonna get a job. I've heard that advice before. It's not great advice. This is my bad advice I've heard video, so if you want to hear some bad advice and how not to listen to it, that's another one. But you should be animating the stuff you want to animate, and you may, over time, try different things. You may try some cartoony stuff, try some realistic things. To show that you can do both is important, because studios sometimes mix and match what types of movies they work on. For example, if you look at DreamWorks, How to Train Your Dragon is a very kind of realistic motion type of show, but then you've got Boss Baby and Trolls, which are a lot more kind of cartoony. Or if you go back to Pixar, you've got Inside Out, where everything outside in Riley's world is realistic, where everything inside her head is much more cartoony. So you can sometimes blend those styles, and it is good to show a studio that you can do both. That said, you do want to tailor the reel for the studio you're applying for. If you're applying to Sony or Blue Sky, where they do a lot more pushed graphic poses, you probably don't need to show them as much hyper-realistic stuff. Whereas at ILM, where they do a ton of hyper-realistic stuff because they're working with live action footage and they're integrating animation with the live action plates, you probably want to show less of the really pushed stuff and a lot more of the character weight and realistic, high-fidelity acting performances. Also, if you have any creature work on your reel, quadrupeds, four-legged creatures, dragons, any of that type of thing, that's going to be a huge selling point, just to show that you can do creature work, which not a lot of animators by ratio can do, because it's not really taught a lot of places. There are workshops you can take and different ways you can learn it, but that's another selling point, especially if you want to jump into VFX. And you should constantly be reevaluating your demo reel as a whole, looking at each piece individually and looking at the reel overall. Is there anything you're missing? Is there anything you have kind of duplicates of? For example, my demo reel, I did this video where I kind of reviewed my own old, I think it was 2017 demo reel or something. That reel had two different shots with Grimmel and Hiccup. Each one had a character sitting, which is kind of a duplicate shot. Hiccup and Grimmel were both sitting down, they were both acting tests. There wasn't really anything new to be gained by watching either one. So in a new demo reel, I'm only gonna pick one of those shots. I'm gonna use the Grimmel shot, even though it's shorter, it doesn't show as much weight. I think the acting is better, the personality is better, and that's the one I want to lean on. So look for the weakest link and look to replace it constantly. That's the thing you always have to be doing. Once you make a demo reel, you're not done. You have to just keep working on your demo reel really until you get a job, and then the stuff you do at that job will get added to your demo reel and replace other things. And it's just kind of a constant cycle of like the Phoenix from Harry Potter. He just caught fire! That makes me want to go watch Harry Potter again. By the way, that Phoenix shot is on somebody's demo reel. Just saying. Now getting to some of the questions that people have asked me about demo reels. For example, when you say you go to school and you do a bunch of different classes, or if you have a lot of different experience, maybe doing different types of work. If you've got some modeling, you've got some animation, you've got some lighting, some effects, blah, blah, blah. Do you put it all in one reel or do you separate it? Generally, you want to separate it. Now, there are a couple options here. You can make one generalist reel, and you can put your best stuff collectively into one reel. Remember to keep it short. It's not about collecting all those pieces and bloating your one reel with it. You do want to keep it short, keep it sweet, just your best stuff. And make sure you list in that case at the bottom somewhere for each shot what it is you did. That way, if you are trying to do a generalist reel, it's clear whether you modeled and rigged and textured this object, but maybe didn't do the animation, or if the animation is motion capture, versus if you were working with motion capture data and that's the focus of the shot or whatever. Generalist reels are a little bit more forgiving because you can kind of mix and match some different ideas. But for getting a specific job in the industry, getting a job at a studio, you do want to have specific reels for modeling, an animation reel, a effects reel. Whatever it is you're doing, you don't want those really blending, because if you're trying to get a job as an animator, for example, your modeling skills aren't going to come into play. That's why it's maybe good to have a website where everything's kind of broken down right there, and if a recruiter were looking for your animation reel, they can also choose to watch the other stuff if they want to. Maybe if there's more openings, if it's a smaller studio, maybe those skills help you, and it's available for them to watch, but it's not distracting if they don't want it. And speaking of distracting, music. Music is one of those things where there's not like a clear yes or no answer on whether or not you should have it. But that said, in general, you want to have, if you have music at all, you want to have it kind of low volume. You don't want it to be like aggressive EDM, dubstep, like keep the music subtle. It should just kind of be a background thing if you even have it. Honestly, my recommendation, in my opinion, is to just not have music. When you are going to conventions, which is not currently happening because of coronavirus, but normally when you're going to conventions and you're meeting people and you're in these loud halls and you're trying to show people your work on an iPad or a tablet or whatever it is, you're already dealing with all this external noise. They're trying to hear your work, and if it's just kind of background music that they're trying to hear, it immediately kind of goes, oh, I don't need to listen to that. Okay, and it kind of disengages. It's a distraction from your work as they try to listen to it. Then they do hear it and it's disappointing because it's not really needed, and then they tune out of it. But then there's an acting shot with dialogue. They have to tune back in. It's a lot. I recommend just not having any music unless it's necessary. If you are going to use music, here's 3 quick examples of something that you could use. Something that everyone else has used and it doesn't help you stand out, so it doesn't really help you to have it. And next, don't use this type of music. That's going to get your reel turned off very quickly. Not just muted, but you might even have the entire reel just closed. Because the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to open it, they're going to see your work, and they're going to hear that music blaring, and the first thought is, where's the remote, where's the whatever, where's the mute button, turn it off, and the sound's going to go away. They've already missed the first 5 to 10 seconds of your shot, and now they're distracted, they're kind of recentering, and because of how many reels have to be looked through by most recruiters, most studios have so many applications, they may not have time to go back and rewatch your shot. So if you started with some good work, they didn't see it, because your music distracted them. Now, I don't know if this is actually a useful thing, but something I tried just as an experiment. If there are any recruiters watching, I'd love to know your thoughts on it down below. But I started my demo reel with a title card with my information, but then I moved with a little audio cue into the first shot that had dialogue. So I had this little countdown icon. That way people kind of knew, hey, there's audio coming up, just so you're aware, because it started right away. Didn't want them to miss it, so if they needed to unmute, they'd have time. When it comes to ordering your shot, what comes first, what comes last, all that kind of stuff, the flow of the demo reel, editing is important, making sure things do flow and that it's not distracting. As far as like the cuts and when it goes from shot to shot, that's when you kind of get into leading the audience. Cinematography plays a little bit into this, even though you're just using completely different shots. Imagine you've got something on this side of the screen and it moves to this side of the screen. If you cut to the next shot, and the focus of the next shot is in this same general area of the frame, it helps the audience's eye to already be looking in the right place to keep going. That's something that you can watch movies and you'll see that's part of editing with movies. You can also use that in your demo reel just to make sure everything is being seen. Because if I'm over here, and then I cut to over here, and I cut to over here, you're caught doing this across the screen, which is just a little bit more distracting than if it flows naturally. It's not always something you can do for your demo reel, but if you happen to have that opportunity, well, may as well use it. But that's not the main driving force behind kind of what comes first, second, third. You're not trying to just match up the eye, where someone's looking. That's not the main way to choose that order. Now, I've heard some conflicting opinions on this, but most of them follow the same basic principles, that you start with your best work. You show your best shot first to really hook the audience, to show the recruiter, hey, I mean business, my reel is gonna be worth watching. And you obviously don't want the quality to drop off after that first shot. You want it to stay good, which is why you wanna just make sure you're always updating everything and keeping your entire reel at the maximum level that you can. But if you had to pick, say, 5 shots and you had the best one first, I've heard different opinions on whether you should just go like best and then just down from there to maybe having your second best be at the end, so you finish really strong too. There's a lot of different ways. It kind of depends on everybody's reel in particular, but I think it's probably true to do your best work first, hook the audience, and then maybe your third best work, something to kind of keep that energy up. Put whatever else you have, it has to be good, still has to be your favorites. If you don't love it, take it out. And then end with your second best work so that they end with a positive kind of taste in their mouth. A good, like, oh yeah, that reel ended really well. Like, that was a good reel, right? Yeah, that was a good reel. And with all of that, if you are a student, if you have student assignments, the basic walk cycle, the flour sack challenge, the weight, pick up a box that's a certain weight and put it down somewhere. Those student assignments that pretty much all of us have done, it's not bad to have those on your demo reel, but you do want to try and get them off as soon as possible, more because you want to show your creativity. All those assignments are kind of standardized. They're things that we've all done, we've all seen them, they're not exciting, they don't really stand out. If you do one really creatively and inventively and you do something really cool, then maybe it's worth keeping on there. But in general, you do want to start doing more shots out of school to replace those. I think that's a really big thing, that when you leave college, when you leave school, that's often where people kind of get confused and disappointed of why they're not getting a job. Because you go through school and you learn all this stuff and you make a demo reel and you apply and then you don't get called back. And often that's just because your demo reel is just composed of student work, which there's nothing wrong with. That's where we all start. But that's the thing that a lot of schools don't really tell you, is that once you finish, depending on what's on your reel, you're gonna have to take some time to redo a lot of those things, to not redo them, not redo the shots you've done, but to take the principles that those shots demonstrate and apply them in new ways to different, more creative shots that better represent you and what you want to do. And you shouldn't be animating stuff based on what you think the studio wants to see. I'm going to do all my shots like this because that's what Pixar wants. That's not what's going to get you hired. What's going to get you hired is coming up with what are you excited about? What do you want to animate? What gets you pumped up? Make those things, put them on your reel, and whether it's Pixar or not, they're gonna see yeah, we can see what you're going for here. Even if the intention is there, but the execution's maybe not as good, the creativity of your ideas should really shine through, and that should be a really big focus for when you're putting together these shots and these demo reels. So show whoever's watching your shot how excited you are to be working on these types of projects. You also want to stop noodling with your shots as soon as possible. Noodling is usually used as a term to say, when you're working on a shot and you're just kind of tweaking this and I'll change that, work on this, that could be better, and you just kind of noodle with it. You don't really have a clear goal of what you're doing, but you're just constantly working on it because it's not really done. It never will be. That's creativity. That's art. Nothing's ever really finished. It's just due. It's time to move on. You've learned your lesson. Put it aside. Work on something else. You'll grow faster. You'll get more out of another shot versus just working on this one for all time. So use deadlines to keep yourself on track, or make lists of the things you want to fix and then complete that list. Watch it one more time, see if there's anything else that needs to be added to that list, and then just kind of go based on that. Once it's pretty much done, it's time to move on. That will help you kind of move from shot to shot, making updates to your demo reel and keeping things fresh. Also, I generally don't recommend going back into your demo reel and saying, this shot needs more work, pulling it out, working on that shot and putting it back, because you could probably make a better shot now than that one is in the first place. Like, adding things, changing things is usually more work and less result, less reward than just saying brand new shot, totally inventive, totally new stuff, all new skills, replace. That's usually the way you want to do it. Presentation, this is a really mixed feedback on this one. If you're in school, you'll probably hear that if you want to be an animator, focus on animation. Don't light, don't render, don't do a background, don't do cloth, don't do hair, don't worry about that stuff. It's about the animation. And while that's not untrue, that is true. It is about your animation. There's also something to be said for presentation quality. Now, the idea behind this advice is when you are learning, when you're a student, and you're focused on the walk cycle, the bouncing ball, anything kind of in that early learning stages, you don't want to be distracted by the other stuff. You want to make sure you're understanding and applying the animation principles, the fundamentals, the mechanics, all that stuff needs to be there because you need to learn it and be able to show it. But once you finish that, there is nothing wrong with lighting your shot, rendering it, making it really look nice, stand out, doing sound design, editing clips together, learning cinematography to make sure your camera angles are really nice. I've got a video on cameras, I've got a video on rendering and lighting and making your shots look nice, even from Playblast. This Samus tutorial has some effects and sound design tips, so a bunch of stuff over there. Check it out. But the goal here is to make your demo reel stand out so that if a recruiter watches 100 demo reels, yours is the one they remember because it was polished, the animation was clean, the animation was nice, it was clear, the posing was great, the story you were trying to tell was nicely communicated, it made them laugh, it made them feel something, the sound design maybe was above and beyond, or the lighting made it like prettier. Whatever it is, you want your stuff to stand out. And all this stuff only gets better with practice. You have to just do more of it to make your stuff better. So don't sit on these shots and try to make them like as perfect as they can be and then put it on because that's the one that's gonna get you a job. Sometimes there is, that one shot on your demo reel that gets you the job, absolutely. But you're more likely to find that shot if you keep doing more shots. And while you only get better with practice, having some kind of feedback or guidance will help accelerate that process of learning, of growth. So if you can get a mentor, if you can join a school, a workshop, some kind of a program, showing it to a friend, even if your friend or your parents or whoever it is, if they don't understand animation and you show your work to them, you show your demo reel to those people, and they look at it and they go, that's great. Well, that's not super great feedback, but if they go, oh, that's really nice, so is he mad at him? And you go, no, he's not. Interesting, because if the general public, like the people who are watching the movies who aren't really into animation, don't fully understand what's going on, that's a huge indicator they need to rework that part. So you can actually get some really good feedback from non-animation people or non-modeling people or whatever. If someone else notices that something's kind of off, but they can't tell you why it looks kind of off, it's still good feedback. And the last tip here is to try not to compare yourself to other people. It's hard sometimes because you're gonna see amazing demo reels out there and you're gonna compare yours to theirs. Try not to, because those people had a demo reel once that was just like yours, or even like, more entry level. We all start from nothing creatively and have to build up. Now everyone builds up at different rates, different speeds, different experiences, kind of factor into all that kind of stuff. But you should really try, it's hard, but try to compare only to your own demo reel from before, which is why making all these different versions and keeping it up to date is helpful not only for showing it to get a job, but also for your own kind of sanity, your peace of mind, and to look back and be proud of your own work, to say, yeah, my demo reel doesn't look like this, but you know what? It sure looks a whole lot better than 3 versions ago, or the one before that, or the one before that. And that growth can be really helpful in keeping the motivation to say, I don't feel like this is good. Then you look back and you go, you know what? It is getting better though. And one day it is going to look like some of these other ones, or even better, and that's okay. So try not to compare yourself to other people's demo reels, only to your own. But that's the other thing about the animation industry. When they say it's a small industry and it's a nice industry, in general it is. Recruiters want you to succeed. They want to tell you yes. They want to give you feedback and help you if they have time. And so when you get feedback from a recruiter, from an animator, from whoever, if it's somebody who knows what they're talking about and is trying to help you, they're trying to help you. They're not trying to give you weird advice to put you on a different path. One of the biggest things about getting a job in the animation industry is being a good person. Sometimes people slip through the cracks, like any industry, sure, but that's kind of the point of the hiring process, interviews and things like that. They're trying to learn a little bit more about who they're interviewing to make sure that whoever they're hiring is actually a good person. That's sometimes more important than the demo reel. Not to say that you can just get in without doing any work. You have to show that you can do the job. But beyond that, you can also learn and improve on the job. They can teach you new skills. You can get extra training. No one's gonna be able to teach you to be a better person. So that's a big part of it. So remember, don't be a jerk, be a nice person, be friendly, be kind. You don't have to be an extrovert, you don't have to be an introvert, none of that makes a difference. As long as you are a positive person to be around, someone that these studios will want to hire because the people at the studios want to work with you, that's extremely important to go with the demo reel. And I have a whole bunch of other stuff I wanna talk about for resumes and cover letters and other hiring type of stuff. So if you want to see more of that, if you have more questions, let me know down below. Happy to make more videos talking about this kind of thing. And again, if you want to ask any of these questions live, talk about it, a link to my Twitch down below, educational resources on Patreon. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video, hit this button so more people can see it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.